Send you some.
Whoops.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WBC Talks. This is round number 31.
Woo!
31 rounds we've been here, and 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗 and I have been working that twice because we do a Spanish version too, so we've been in 62 shows. First, let me introduce 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗. She's the director of the WBC University. 𝗧𝗔, welcome.
Hi, Victor. Thank you very much. Hi, Gil. Hi to the panelists today. Well, it's right. It's round 31, number 31. Time has flied by. And what I do at the beginning of each panel is to try to share a small positive reflection. And today we are going to know a little bit about our brain. And I'm going to ask you the next question. Is the brain our main opponent during this time? What happens to our brain in a time like the one we are living right now? And what is the main function? Well, the main function of the brain is to help us to survive, okay? Our brain doesn't care if we are having a good time or a bad time during the day. Our brain is more concerned with situations that may affect its survival. The brain is negative, pessimistic, fearful in the current circumstances that we are living. It is very likely that at this time, our brain will focus more on the negative because it feels threatened by the pandemic. And for the same reason, it is normal that we earn more likely pessimistic thoughts. Therefore, in these moments of crisis, it becomes even more and more necessary to make deliberated efforts to force ourselves to think and act in a positive way. What it bothers the brain the most? Uncertainty is what it bothers more our brain, because our brain is looking for information to have certainty of the moment. Our brain needs to close process and it needs to know what is going to happen next. So it is very likely that not knowing for sure what will happen in the short term, uncertainty grows and takes us to have even physical symptoms like anxiety episodes start to become more frequently. That feels maybe a shortness of breath, chest pain, and many, many others. But that's something from our brain, okay? So does our brain accept changes? No, our brain rejects changes because change means pain. It involves energy. And today, because of the pandemic, there is no planning of what is going to happen, okay? So, because we need to remember our brain is looking to survive right now. The next question is confinement good for the brain? No, confinement, it does not suit well our brain because our brain is a social organ, okay? So when our brain feels lonely, does not generate the message of self-preservation, okay? The messages, the chemical message from our brain are not being released. So in this time of crisis, what we need to do is to put in practice all the advices that we are being giving in these talks. Of course, having positive thoughts, positive emotions, so we can have positive sensations. That means that we need control our brain through our mind, okay? And maybe an extra recommendation for today is to find an activity that challenge you, that challenge your brain, okay? That we need our brain to move from the comfort zone that is right now, and we need to put our brain to work. And of course, don't be lonely. Try to communicate to other people. Loneliness doesn't help. We can get together by Facebook, social media, whatever, even though we know it's never going to be the same like being together face to face, touching and everything. But it's a way to being healthy in our mind and our brain. I hope this small reflection helped today, just to try to understand that the brain is not our mind and that we can control our brain through our mind. Thank you, Victor. And thank you, Jill and everybody.
So
Thank you, Xochitl.
to my house tonight and repeat all of that.
Great, of course.
I can send you the link, Jill, and so you can replay it every time you need it.
Of course, I can watch it on Facebook.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
And
that
now,
was,
you
that was
know
quite,
everybody that
quite
is
the
here.
unexpected opening.
What you said, Mark?
That was quite the unexpected opening for me.
You know everybody here that have been with us. Jill Diamond, Jill, how are you? How is New York?
New York is gloomy today, not my favorite weather in this, and the weather has dropped like 10 degrees.
Yeah.
So, but it's doable. We're healthy, we're alive, and we're going to choose to be optimistic.
How is Gypsy doing in your apartment?
Gypsy is eating my apartment, but she is doing as well as a puppy can do, but she gets more exercise than most people. She's okay. Good companion.
Thank you, Jill. Bruce Silverglade from Gleason's gym. How you
Hello.
doing, Bruce?
I'm doing fine, and I'm so pleased to be on this panel this morning and get to talk to some people, because it is lonely when you're isolated like this. So it's great to be here.
I have 2 kids that I have to tie them up, so I don't feel lonely, really, you know? Mark Taffet. Mark, how you doing? It's good to have you here.
Yeah, nice to see you, Victor and Jill and Bruce, and the good doctor from the WBC who opened the show there. I have 3 grandkids who have been around my house a lot lately, so I understand the need to tie up the kids, but been very, very busy with them. It's been wonderful, though. It's been a great opportunity to develop a much more in-depth and intimate relationship with them, and it changes your appreciation of everything and everybody when you do this. And actually, I said to my wife, we haven't spent as much time together since we were in college in the 1970s, and it's been fantastic. Again, a great, a whole different level of intimacy in the relationship that I find really fascinating and wonderful. So I'm very appreciative to have my loved ones around me, and also to enjoy opportunities like this to spend some time and talk with friends, and definitely exercising the brain like we discussed in the opening here, because it's one of the most important things to do. Change rooms, change scenario, spend some time thinking, reading, enjoying all different types of media intake, listening to a lot more music, doing a lot more reading. It's a very spiritual time, and I find that for me, it helps me get through times like this and feel like we can grow and expand at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah, I think you're right, and that's something that Xochitl already told us. It depends on how you focus this pandemic issue.
Yes.
If you prefer to suffer or not, and I think you're doing really good.
Yeah.
Jill, go ahead, please.
Well, for some kids, it starts in the backyard throwing punches at invisible opponents, or at youth centers where the discipline of the sport is as big as the technique itself. But for most of us, it started at the gym, a place where structure and community is offered up in equal proportions, and the work gets done. A place where older people show respect to younger ones, whether or not they'll be the next Ali or Mayweather. How impressive is that? Someone actually takes the time to show these young people that they're important. So there are many, many gyms, big ones, small ones, all around the world. But one thinks of gyms, there's always one #1 name for its history, its longevity, its authenticity, loved by amateurs and pros alike, and that's Gleason's. The magic of Gleason's is that you never know who you're going to run into when you walk into that gym. You can run into Roberto Duran, you can run into Heather Hardy, you can run into Holt McCallany, or a young boxer just trying to be the next prospect. Everyone knows that at Gleason's, that is the first stop you go to when you come to New York from another country. It's the go-to place. So here we have Bruce Silverglade, who is not just the owner, but the heart of Gleason's, who his basic job is also to encourage young boxers, to nurture them. Mark Taffet, known as one of the most important executives in television sports history, whose passion now is creating and elevating champions. So they're totally synced. What do we have here, Bruce?
Well,
Can you?
Gleason's Gym is a community center as much as it is a boxing gym. It's a place where everybody's equal. People come in and work out. They bring their families. There's certain times when there are carriages in there with the children and the wives, and now the other half watching the people train. It's a fun place to be. It's a destination, as you said, in New York City. I'm in an area which is called Dumbo, which is a very big tourist area by the Brooklyn Bridge and Brooklyn Bridge Park. So we not only have many people coming as a destination to the gym, but they come to the destination of the location. And then when they see the signs for the gym, they come in. So all day long, from 5 o'clock in the morning when we open till 10 o'clock in the evening when we close, there are tourists. They come in droves. They have cameras and pictures, and they love all the pictures that are on the walls and all the memorabilia that I have around. And it's just fun. I get used to having the champions in there, and so when Duran comes in, or when Ali used to come in years ago, it was something that I would take for granted because I'm there all day long. But the tourists love it. When they come in, there's always someone there, whether it's a celebrity that's training for a part in a movie, or a part on Broadway, or just someone training and working out. It's just fun. So it's a place where I love to be, and it's got a great history. It started back in 1937, and from 1937 until today, we've trained and produced 136 world champions. So it's fun. Just a great place to be.
My first boxing experience was at Gleason's Gym. It wasn't at this location, but a friend of mine who had just had a baby said, I got to get in shape and you're going to come boxing with me. Mm-hmm. So we went over to Gleason's. She had the baby carriage, just like you said. We parked the baby carriage, got in the ring, and she proceeded to be, let's say, too professional for me. That was it for a little bit of a while. But that was my first experience, was at the famous Gleason's Gym. It was amazing. So who is Peter Gagliardi?
Well, Gagliardi was a cab driver, and he was training some fighters, and he wanted to have his own gym. The big gym back in his day, it was called Stillman's. It was in Manhattan, and it was the place to train everybody. All the major champions in the New York area and around the world would come into Stillman's to train. And Gagliardi decided he wanted to have his own place. So he found a place in the Bronx, New York. It was in a section called the Hub, and it was an Irish area. And back in 1937, the Irish and the Italians didn't get along real well. So Gagliardi felt, instead of calling it Gagliardi's Gym, which was his Italian background, he decided to call it Gleason's Gym, so it sounded like it was an Irish gym. And very quickly, it became a hot gym. A fellow by the name of Phil Terranova became a world champion, and he was closely followed by 𝗧𝗥𝗨𝗡𝗗 as a world champion. Became a hot gym. People wanted to train there. So 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, his first name was Robert, decided to legally change his name to Gleason's, and it was known as Bobby Gleason's Gym. It was, there's the address, it was 434 9th Avenue in the Bronx, New York. And it was a hot gym. It just kept growing. And in the early 50s, Stillman's closed down. Lou Stillman passed away, and there was nobody to continue the gym. So Gleason's became the hot gym and replaced Stillman's. And so all the champions that would come into town trained at Gleason's gym. And in 1974, the housing, the gymnasium that we were in the Bronx was torn down for made into a housing project. So Bobby had to relocate, and he found a spot in Manhattan. It was at 252 West 30th Street, and it was 1 block away from Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden was the mecca of boxing. It was the place where everybody wanted to fight. 10 rounders from around the world, good fighters from around the world, would take a 4-round fight just so that they could fight at Madison Square Garden. And we were fortunate to be the gym right next to the garden. So everybody that came in came and trained at Gleason's. And it was a time before the computers and before fax machines, and the managers and the trainers and the promoters all hung out at the gym. So many of the fights were made right at Gleason's gym. You would just have a handshake deal, and it went through. And so it was an exciting time. And again, many of these champions were training. Then in 1994, we lost our lease in Manhattan and had to relocate again. So we were looking around. There was another depression going on, and we couldn't afford anything in Manhattan. We found a spot in Brooklyn, between the, it was right underneath the Brooklyn Bridge, between Manhattan and Brooklyn Bridge, and the section was not known as Dumbo at the time. It was an undeveloped area. A fellow that had quite an insight named David Walentis was a developer that realized that this was an area that could turn into something very nice. And so we went over there, and he asked us to come over and take a look at the spot, and showed us his models of what he was going to turn the area into. And I had a partner at the time, his name was Ira Becker. And Ira and I, we could care less about what he was going to turn the area into. We just knew that he was going to give it to us dirt cheap. So we were able to go over and relocate. And although it was in Brooklyn, it wasn't the greatest section of Brooklyn. We had a monopoly on the better fighters. So the fighters followed us over, and not too many other people followed us because it wasn't a nice area. We told everybody, don't come in by the F train. It's a nasty location. Maybe you'll take the A and C if it's in the daytime, but you certainly come in through the 2 and the 3. That's up in Brooklyn Heights, and you can come up there and walk over and see us.
Boy, that area has changed, Bruce.
It's now, as I said, it's called Dumbo, which stands for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass, and it's currently ranked the 4th wealthiest neighborhood in all 5 boroughs.
Wow.
So we went from an area where people were afraid to go to an area where people can't afford to be at. And
So I'm not even going to ask you how you're going to keep it open all during this terrible time when nobody can actually go into the gym. But tell me what happened in 1983, because we have a special guest here.
In 1983, when we were developing the women's boxing program.
That's right.
Well, we always had women coming into the gym. They weren't allowed to train, and for a long time they weren't permitted to box. They were banned in the amateurs. There were always professional fighters, but they were few and far between. But there were always women in the gym because we do so many film shoots and locations that there were always women. And they said, we want to train here. And my partner, who was older than I at the time, and was more of a traditionalist, said, no, women aren't allowed in the gym. They have to stay home take care of the men and the babies and do the cooking. And I came from a different generation, and I thought the women should train. So I was able to convince my partner to do an experiment. We closed the gym early, 3 nights a week, and allowed women to come in. And they started coming in, and they started coming in droves. And it turned out to be very, very successful. And then one of the women from Gleason's actually sued the Daily News at the time, because the Daily News would not permit women to fight in the amateur tournament. Once she won the lawsuit and women were allowed to start training, the Daily News got behind it, so there was a lot of publicity. So more and more women were coming into the gym. Then we had the movie like that Hilary Swank was in, $1 Million Baby. That got a lot of recognition, so it brought more and more women in. But we started bringing women in, and we dominated the amateur scene and the Golden Gloves for a number of years, because we were the main gym, the first gym, and the lead gym, and letting the women train. Now it's been diversified. There's women in all the boxing gyms. It's a great thing, and we have to fight for that title. We don't automatically get it like we used to, but we have some great women that came in, and one of my favorites, Heather Hardy.
With that?
Yes, she came into the gym and was training, and I see her on the screen with her smile. And
Hi, Bruce.
I miss seeing you at the gym every morning. Hopefully we'll be seeing each other shortly.
So Heather, do you find it very welcoming to work out at Gleason's? What's been your situation there? And I know you're also a trainer there, right?
Yeah, I'm a trainer. I remember the very first day I walked into Gleason's in 2010. Bruce was sitting at the front desk taking attendance, and he said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "I want to fight. I'm a fighter. I want to fight, and I want to fight everybody you got at 125." And he walked me into Alicia Ashley, and I mean, there are so many women at Gleason's. Like, it's almost it's shocking to me to hear like that other girls have trouble sparring with other girls, like from all around the city. People come to us to get all the female work. You know, we have world champion females in almost every weight class, from Fire at 108 to Sonia at heavyweight. So.
And Bruce, you put up a banner for each one of your champions, and they stay champions for life, because those banners never come down from the gym, right?
Now I'm finding it hard to find new spots for the new banners, but we will. So I want more champions, both men and female and women.
So Mark, how has women's boxing changed since you were at HBO?
I had quite a dilemma when I worked at HBO. I had the great fortune to found HBO pay-per-view, TVKO, back in 1991 it was called. And we had a lot more freedom and flexibility to put fights on pay-per-view than was afforded to the folks who programmed the network, the monthly subscription service at HBO in the World Championship Boxing Series. For many, many, many years, I wanted to have women on our cards. We actually had Mia St. John on a few of our cards. I was envious at the time not having Christy Martin on some of our cards. But I was disappointed that we didn't have women's boxing live on HBO and more of it on pay-per-view. I fought hard, had many debates and discussions about it. So when I retired from HBO in 2015, one of the things I thought I could do to do something meaningful and really give back to the sport would be to use my experience, my networking and contacts to help women's boxing. And lo and behold, I had the opportunity to meet and work with now for 3.5 years, Clarissa Shields. And there couldn't have been a better opportunity for me, and a better person with whom, and a better fighter with whom to make that change and to really help change the game. And I tell Clarissa that all the time. I mean, as much as I love managing her, I made no bones about the fact that it was through her that I wanted her to be the vessel and the vehicle through which we could change the game for women, get women's boxing on the big networks, the big premium TV networks and others, the big streaming networks, have women be featured in the main event, which hadn't happened before, and to really work hard on getting the purses up higher and higher. And we've had a lot of success, a tremendous amount of success in 3 years. I mean, You know, Clarissa is now earning well into six figures for her fights. And the first step is for that to happen and for there to become a broad acceptance of women being paid. I know Katie Taylor is being paid well, earning money now for her fights. Cecilia Brækhus is earning good money for her fights. And that, in addition to that, a lot more women are getting opportunities on cards. I know surely on our cards, we always have another women's fight whenever Clarissa's fighting, and we try hard to get them on television. Did that with Christina Hammer, Alicia Napoleon, Franchon Cruz, and others. And I think that's only going to expand. And as that happens, and as men see, because the sport is still viewed primarily by men, and men are going to be the ones who create the opportunities as viewers for women to make the money. You know, it's not just women hoping that women watch them. We need men to watch the women fight. And just like happened in MMA, as more and more men see these great female fighters with hearts and souls, and you know, Heather Hardy's got a heart and a soul like very few others. Great credit to the sport and to women's boxing and women's sports. We're going to see more and more women fighting.
Let's not leave out that Heather Hardy cleans up really well. She's got, she is the full package.
Oh, thanks, Jill.
There's a lot of facets to a diamond, as they say, and Heather's got many facets for sure.
Oh, thank you.
I know, Heather, you don't fight strictly for the money, that you love to fight. So how do you feel it's progressing now? Do you feel
I think it's great. I love that the next Olympics is going to have more weight classes, opening doors for more females. I think that the reason why we're seeing women's boxing open up isn't because somebody just magically changed it. It's because the girls were allowed to get into the Olympics, get international competition, recognition by promoters. And those are the girls who are getting TV time. Those girls, and then all the girls that the promoters want to fight them. So for right now, I mean, the fact that we can have more girls in the Olympics means more opportunities within the weight class for girls like me to try to come up and beat them up.
Bruce, when you see people, young people come into your gym, what qualities do you see in them that makes you go, I think this person's going to really break into the pros and do well?
Well, it's very difficult to make that decision, especially when they first come in. The young kids, they come in and you don't know what their motivation is. Maybe they're trying to impress their dad or their mom, or what their reason is to come in. Everybody that comes in the gym tells you they're going to be the next champion and how hard they're going to work. And you know, I listen to everyone, and I listen to their story, and I try to give them a little advice. But you have to wait and see. You have to see if they really want to do it. Do they want to put the time in? Heather is a perfect example. She's in the gym early in the morning, late at night. She's a trainer there, obviously, but she's always working out. She's always doing it. She's always sparring. So if a person has that desire, then you look at them a little bit special. But there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just their desire. There's a lot of luck involved. Somebody can be a terrific fighter and they have a soft chin. If they get tapped on the jaw, they go right down. Other people, they take a punch better than others. But yeah, they have to want it. The individual has to want it. They can't be talked into it. They can tell you what they're going to do, how good they are, how hard they're going to work. They can lie to anybody but the person in the mirror. They can't lie to themselves. And so when a trainer tells me how I got up early in the morning and knocked on the door to get my fighter to go out to run, and I drove right next to him or biked next to him to make sure that he did it, that person's not going to be the champion. The champion is the one that gets up before his trainer and works out hard, works out and does everything he's supposed to do. So that's what you have to look for. You have to see who's self-motivated in there, who has the talent, and how far do they want to go.
Mark, what qualities do you look for in someone before you represent them? What qualities make a champion to you?
Wow. Well, you know, my situation is a little bit different because of my background and expertise, and because I'm in some of the later stages of my career. I look to work with athletes that I know we can make a real impact with on the sport, because I think that's something that my background uniquely can help the right athletes accomplish. And I want to open the doors and help pave the roads for the future. But having said that, when I look back at my days at HBO, where I spent a lot more time looking at undercard fighters and talent development, thinking about, I worked through 4 generations of fighters, and it was no accident that we didn't have valleys, in between the peaks. I started with Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis, George Foreman, the great heavyweights. We then moved into the era of Oscar De La Hoya, Felix Trinidad, Miguel Cotto, Fernando Vargas, Shane Mosley, then to the era of Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Marco Antonio Barrera, Eric Morales, Juan Manuel Marquez, many of those, and then eventually to Canelo Alvarez, Gennady Golovkin, Andre Ward, and the stars of today. That doesn't happen, first of all, without boxing gyms. I think just to segue for a moment, take a detour for a moment. Other sports have organized instructional leagues, minor leagues, places for talent to develop. In the sport of boxing, and it's almost really poetry when you walk into those great gyms, but what's happening there is the next generation of fighters and great talent are developing and being seen right before your eyes. You know that the eyes that are looking at those talent are the type of eyes that look through some of the greatest lenses in history. In their case, they don't need cameras. Their own eyes are the lenses. They see talent, they spot them. The great trainers know how to develop them. And that is what creates the foundation for the sport of boxing. Gleason's gym, Kronk Gym, 5th Street in Miami, Freddie Roach's gym, Wild Card out in LA, on and on. That's where the greatest moments in our sport actually take place. It's the moments before the moments. By the time those fighters get to Madison Square Garden, MGM, Caesars Palace, the Staples Center, the O2, by the time they get there, they're stars. Even though fighters fighting on the non-televised undercards of those fights, to get into those big buildings, you've already been ordained a star. It's the fighters coming out of those gyms that are really the gems of the future. And some of my greatest moments have been spending time at those gyms over the years and seeing fighters who then eventually made it to, in our case at HBO, the Boxing After Dark series. Every time I went to a fight, I went to the undercards, because I can't tell you how many times we saw non-TV fighters who we said, we got to have that fighter. That's someone we got to go to. The days and endless weeks and hours I spent with the trainers of our sport, in those gyms, and talking about where the great fighters are coming from. That's where our sport develops, and that's where it needs to continue to develop. So I have a great place in my heart for these gyms. In this time, I mentioned this to Jill before, in this time where we're looking to do fights for potentially a prolonged period of time where there aren't a lot of fans present, I think we should be going to the great gyms of this sport and televising fights from there. Let's let people know that there's a beauty and a magic and something special and poetic that comes out of those buildings. Those walls can talk, and those fighters in that ring with their fists can talk. And I think we're going to see some fights televised from those places, and it's going to help bring the sport back again and give it some of the meaning that people are missing in the sport.
I love that idea, and it's incredible B-roll, and it's just to bring the history together with the fight. Amazing. Heather, have you ever had or maybe not, but ever had to say to somebody who you were close to, don't go pro? Maybe not the best idea for you?
Yeah, I have, because a lot of the kids, like, you get this excuse from a lot of the boys in the gym, like, oh, I'm a street fighter and I just don't do good with the amateurs and I'm going to turn pro. And my advice to them is like, look, if you can't win the Golden Gloves, you're going to get brought up as a B-side fighter. You're not going to win the big ones you need to. Like, if you can't beat up all the kids in your weight division, you ain't got no business making this your career, or it's going to be a short one for you. And unfortunately, you see a lot of kids do that. They don't win the tournaments. They feel like, oh, I'm aging. I got to get in there. I want to be pro. They want the recognition to say I'm a professional boxer, but they don't really have the sense to think of it as a business. Like, you got to go in smart, because boxing is one of those things where one mistake and your whole career goes the other way.
And how are you and your other friends, athletes, dealing with this shutdown right now?
Well, a lot of us are upset. We are obviously in Brooklyn in the hot spot. I haven't even been outside for a run. I can't, it's got to the part in Dumbo. Now it's getting a little nice. So while the tourists are coming, people are carelessly walking around with no masks on. I have a daughter at home, so I can't, risk bringing stuff back. So I'm out once a week to go food shopping, and that's it, or maybe to grab coffee. But me and my friends have been like virtually keeping in touch just like this. I do some Instagram live, some free workouts every day, and I'm grabbing like 𝗥𝗢𝗨𝗡𝗗, Melissa, like a bunch of the girls will come and teach class with me, and we get to interact with our fans. So just doing the best we can, virtual workouts, things like that.
And you're doing something today also for Garden of Dreams, right?
Yeah, the garden contacted me a couple weeks ago to do like a video for them. Like they were putting together like a montage, like a thank you to the essential workers. And I told the girl, like, I'm home, so anything you need, just call me. And she asked if I wanted to volunteer. They have like kids who all come, and I'll do like question and answer and then give them like a little workout.
It's great. That's great.
I have a question for Bruce.
Yes.
Long ago, there was fights between fighters, but also involved the gym's pride. I mean, it is this gym against this gym. Is that still working on boxing?
No, unfortunately, it's not. And I think it would be a great concept. I've tried a few times. I spoke to a few promoters about doing something with my women. I currently have 6 female world champions training at the gym, and I thought it would be great to have Gleason's gym fight the girls from around the world or something like that. But there's been no major rivalries, but it's something that should be developed and would be a lot of fun. But even in New York, where we had the 5 boroughs, and we used to be one borough would be a rival against another borough. It's really not that way any longer. It's a shame. I want to go back to Mark for a moment. Mark, back in 1986, I promoted 2 pro shows out of Gleason's gym. They were terrific. We didn't have very much money then. We don't have very much money today, but we did 4 rounders, and the main event was a 6-rounder, and they were just kids and men, guys, out of the gym, and we just wanted to promote some shows and have them get some work, and it was terrific. We packed the gym. Obviously, there was no TV. It was just a local show, and they were both very, very successful. But the New York State Athletic Commission asked me not to do any more because we didn't bring any money in, and the cost of doing the show for the state, for the physicals and their officials and the doctors, et cetera, was more than they were able to get in tax revenue. So they asked us not to do it. But I think that's a great concept. I always thought studio boxing would be a fantastic thing. So if you're interested, Gleason's is very interested in hosting a pro show.
So Bruce, if you have a piece of paper, write your phone number down and hold it up on the screen.
Feel here, like, actually,
I'm sure we'll do. Bruce, I mean, so I do a lot of work with 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗, and he's out in Detroit. So we literally are looking into a show with Crunk right now. And I said to Dimitri, we got to do the same thing in New York at Gleason's. And it's not just a conversation or a coincidence. It's a bit coincidental that we're on the same call together. Maybe, Jill's making a match here, a 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗, as they call it. And but there's no doubt that it would be wonderful for us, particularly in this phase, because all those issues about costs and we can't go there and we need to sell tickets. Well, guess what? You're now equal to every other venue. In fact, I think you're better than equal, because the name Gleason's will give viewers who are at home at these times, not being able to see and feel a crowd, not being able to see some of the venues they're used to seeing, I think it'll give them a comfort level and almost a sense of romance about boxing and what it's about. And we need to lift the telecast and lift the sport, and Gleason's plays a role in that. So it's definitely something that I want to see done over the next few months. I'm talking with some networks and promoters right now about doing it. It will happen. And I'll definitely be reaching out to you shortly to talk
All right,
about it.
please. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, we'd love to.
I have one more question for Heather and for Mark. I was in Heather's fight against Shelly Vincent. It was really amazing. I worked that fight, the way they handle the whole story, and everybody needs an arch rival. How can we build this in women's fight? Because you can have the biggest start in boxing, but if you cannot fight against someone that keeps that in the mind of everybody, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. I'll use Clarissa as a real life example. I mean, nothing that's happened in her career since she's turned pro has been an accident. I was taught at HBO by Seth Abraham and by some of the great promoters, and Bob Arum in particular. We always looked 2 years into the future. Every day we had a rolling 2-year calendar and a 2-year plan. And we were building stories because we knew we needed to. Having great athletes is a must. You can't do it without great athletes, but you have to go beyond that and connect them to the fans. And you have to make it a pretty intimate connection. So we were always looking to build stories. In Clarissa's case, making history, winning weight classes, fighting in a number of weight classes, the fact that she's coming down from 68 to 60 and now to 154, the fact that she debuted, people told me I was crazy against 𝗥𝗙𝗏 𝗏𝗏, no accident. The fact that she's fought for the undisputed title, now that she's getting in with Marie-Eve Dicaire next at 154, we're making those stories. We had Christina Hammer on Showtime. Alicia Napoleon fought her last fight on Showtime with the thought being that if she won that fight, she was going to fight in New York at Madison Square Garden against Clarissa. That was our plan. Guess what? Somebody foiled that plan. And the greatest, you make a plan and guess what? And it doesn't work out. But history comes, because of people who put things together and make them happen. And, in the case of someone like Heather Hardy, Heather's got a great base in New York and she's got great fans in New York. And by focusing on that story, there's no doubt that we can build something. Heather, one thing I'll ask you is, I don't know if you've ever done, in addition to fighting, if you've ever done broadcasting, but I know you have a lot of passion. I know you're you have a great analysis of the sport. And I'd love to have you be a guest on some of the shows that we do over the next few months. And let the fans know that not just do you can fight, but you can, you speak well, you present yourself well. And I think you would be a fans broadcaster because they get to hear and feel the fight through you. And that's something that could give another dimension to women's boxing. So it's something I'd love to explore with you.
Oh, that'd be great, Mark. Thanks. I have considered it. I think every fighter, especially when they're getting up there in years like myself, starts thinking like, what's after boxing? What's next? What do I want to do? And thank you for that, because a lot of people always are surprised, like, wow, Heather, you're smart. Yeah.
Yeah, the fans need to feel the fights in a way that you would definitely be able to convey. I mean, there's nothing you haven't been through. There's not a war you haven't been in. There's not a development aspect that you haven't fought through and had to overcome. You know what all those trials and tribulations are. You know how hard it is. And fans will feel it through you. You're not shy in expressing yourself. You wear it on your sleeve. I used to love George Foreman and Roy Jones, for example, at HBO as broadcasters, because they made the fans feel from the fans' perspective. We had a lot of wonderful, brilliant announcers, but they didn't all connect with the fans. The ones that made the fans feel comfortable and feel the sport were the ones that really added something. We need that in women's boxing. And I think, while you're doing your training and your fighting, I think you could work on this craft as well and probably really help out.
That sounds fun.
Another virtual handshake, please. This is
Yeah.
I'm also a boxing commentator for Latin America, but in Spanish. So if you learn Spanish, you can come with me.
Okay.
No, but what talking about what just Mark said, it is so different. I can visit the gyms, I can study, I can analyze, but the point of view of someone like you that it's been living, suffering, enjoying all the points, all the different points of that, people can feel that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, look, Heather's a walking movie. I mean, just the same things you get out of a great film, you get from sitting, listening to, speaking with Heather. Her life, her life probably at some point will be a movie, a documentary or a feature film. There's no reason why not. And those doors are opening more and more for women as well. But people need to feel that intimacy and that connection to the athletes, and particularly in women's boxing. There's perceptions, but there are 100 times more misperceptions and misconceptions about what women's boxing is and isn't. People have no idea the hearts and souls that these women bring in, the skills that they bring. And, I'll admit, I've always said that women are a lot smarter than men and a lot more capable of men. And there was this crazy physical thing that, men have, used for centuries to create advantages. Women can outdo men in almost every aspect when they put their minds to it. And I think women's boxing, just like in women's MMA, it came right through the screen, and it will happen again. It's going to happen now. We have a great crop of women's fighters, as Heather mentioned. We have, they're not only in the gyms, but they're coming through the amateurs. The young women who are fighting now, coming out of the Olympics, are creating great motivation for the next crop of young women. And we're going to have great product, and that product's going to be seen. And they're going to see that those women have hearts and souls as big, if not bigger, than 90% of the men. And that's what's going to create the attraction, and it'll keep the doors open for women's boxing in the future.
Can I just say one thing? I think that it's not about like because I've considered announcing, broadcasting. Lou always talks to me about it, because I'm good on camera. I'm not shy to talk, and I talk and people want to listen to me, but I don't want to just commentate on women's fights or women's boxing. Right. I forgot more about boxing than most of these broadcasters will ever know. I could broadcast a man's fight, and to me, I think that brings more respect to the sport and more respect to women's boxing. Yes. To broadcast and commentate on those big fights that everybody's watching, and for me to say, look at this idiot, what he's doing, he's not even paying attention. Mm-hmm. To be able to call those fights and let people recognize that. Yeah. No, I could fight, I did fight, but I am smart when it comes to sports. I am smart when it comes to boxing, not just girls boxing, all boxing.
No, you know what, you made such a great point. I always say to people when I talk about Clarissa, what are her goals? What do I want for her? We want to drop the gender label. I don't want people to talk about women's boxing and men's boxing, just boxing. I don't want people to talk about pound for pound when we talk about her pound for pound, the female pound for pound champion. No, just let's crack the top 10 pound for pound simply because she's one of the 10 best fighters in the world right now, male or female. I want to drop those words. It's a waste of time. So you make a great point, and I think the fans would just love it. The more we have a few shows we're working on behind the scenes. And so, Heather, I'm going to open my mouth and put my foot right in it. I'm getting you on one of those.
Okay, thanks. And I want to call a boy fight too.
Yes, yeah, you're gonna. That's what I mean. Not just our cards are going to have one women's fight and a bunch of men's fights. Right now, that's usually what happens. And you know what the truth is? And Clarissa knows this. She has said to me so many times, Mark, I love headlining fights, but when I headline a fight, I'm a woman headlining a card that still has a certain perception to it. I don't mind being under one of those big men on some of those big pay-per-view fights or those big network fights. Get me there. Let's get the big audience to see me as well. She's 100% right and very astute about that point. It's the same point you are making and the same point you make, on another level, talking about broadcasting. Men would love to hear you talk about how they should be getting their asses kicked and why. And the more I think about it, it's a natural, and I know a great place we could try to make it happen. So I talk to Lou about these things all the time, so I'll definitely talk to him about it.
By the way, Mark, there's a really, really nice documentary that was done about Heather that you should see. It's really heartwarming.
Where can I watch it? Where can I watch it? I happen to have a few hours tonight.
I'm sure it's on my website somewhere, but I'll forward it to you, Jill, so you can
Yeah.
pass it on. It's just a short doc.
Great.
You mean the documentary called The Heat?
The Heat, yeah.
But you have another video that is really interesting also, that it says, "I'm not sorry, I'm a girl."
Oh
Too.
yeah, I did do that one too.
Really?
That was I think for something Tribune. I don't remember the name, but there are a couple of them. Bruce knows, they always come and want to talk to the single mom.
Mhm.
Bruce,
Is that what they'll talk to you about, the single mom? Yeah.
Bruce, what do you think about the gyms opening in the other states now?
Well, I want to watch very closely how they open, what their regulations are. I've come up with a lot of things that I want to do at Gleason's when we reopen, but I'm sure I'm going to get some direction from the government, or at least I hope I get some direction from the government. But I want to see how they open, how they ease into it. And, you know, will sparring be allowed? Will mitt work be allowed? Instead of using mitts, will the trainers have to use the glove on the end of a stick and have a little distance in there? But it's going to be very interesting, and I'm glad there's some gyms opening in other areas so that I can take an example of them and see how they progress. But we're very anxious to open. We've cleaned. I was able to paint the gym and refurbish it a little bit. We have new equipment in there. It looks like a brand new gym. We're ready. I purchased thousands of face masks, thousands of gloves. I got gallons of hand sanitizer, a lot of wipes. You can't even imagine how many I have. So I'm ready to open. I have thermometers. I've checked with my good friend, Dr. 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗞𝗦. He says anybody that has a fever over 100, don't let them in the gym. So so we have the thermometers, and we'll be watching. I want to make one quick comment about the women. I see in the gym, the women train harder than the men. They're more dedicated than the men. They take it much more seriously. The women are easy to train when they first come in. Not the champions, obviously, they've already been in the gym, but the new women that come in the gym, they're easy. They say, "Teach me how to box." And you start from ground zero, and you teach them how to box, and they take it very, very seriously. Most of the women are highly educated. They already have jobs. They're not looking at boxing as a career. They're looking at it as another opportunity, another challenge. Some of them obviously have talent, like Heather, and she goes on and wins a world championship. Like Carissa, she goes on and wins titles. But the women are hardworking and more dedicated than the men today. Bruce,
let me just say that obviously to televise a fight in the gym, you know, there's going to be a lot of discussion and a lot of protocol and rigor applied, which, but I'm sure that your facility will meet that easily. I think testing is very important, and what I mean specifically is, you know, the temperature tests. So many people have the virus asymptomatically, and the temperature tests come late, well too late into transmission. Many people can be, and you can't have a boxing gym where every person stands 6 feet apart and puts a glove on the end of a stick like you talk about. And I don't say that out of, well, gee, you know, I'm old fashioned. It's a sport that to train and learn and perform at your best requires closer contact. There are going to have to be tests that can be done and they have to be quick tests, quick results, because you can't be once a week and wait a week for results. Right. But when those happen, I think those are going to be regular, frequent members of the gym. And if athletes and anyone that walks into that gym, trainers, they can all be tested every day, and they can walk in and make sure they're okay. And there can be a quick result gotten, you know, one that's acceptable to the medical community. And that would be the greatest way to reduce the anxiety and the risk, and allow boxing to do what it does. And, you know, we don't have as many people necessary to do a boxing match, but the risk is still the same. Two people near each other with a form of intimacy that are, you know, the physical contact and exchange of fluid and air and everything else. We're going to overcome that with testing, and we've got to overcome it quickly. But as soon as that happens, those gyms are going to be right back ready to go. And I suspect potentially even sooner than that with, you know, maybe not in the state of New York, but in other states, that activity is going to be allowed. And, you know, we have to be careful, but I know you guys are going to meet the test and exceed the bar, which is one of the reasons I know we can talk with you about televising fights there.
Bruce will definitely do it. Our friends in Georgia, where they open the gyms, are having a terrific problem getting the correct kind of cleaners.
Yeah.
They're just not in stock because they're all used in the hospital. So the industrial cleaners that they need are not available, and yet the gyms have been open. And that,
yeah, that's a problem. That's a real problem. I mean, that has to change. We have to be really careful.
wouldn't happen.
The products are available. They're hard. They're not easy to come by. I relied on my wife, who's terrific, to research things for me.
Over there, isn't she? Isn't there your wife?
Yeah.
Lean back.
Hello. So you want to wave? There she is in the
Hi,
back.
Jill.
But she's researched for me, and again, it's they're not real cheap, but you can find all the products that you need. You can find all the cleaning products that you need, but it takes time. You have to research it, and you have to get it. And the other problem with it, you can't order it today and expect it tomorrow. You know, there's a backlog and all this. But I definitely want as much protection out of Gleason's gym as possible. I want everybody that walks into Gleason's to feel that it's a safe environment to go to. When the testing is available, I'll be a testing center for the whole city of New York and for the borough of Brooklyn. But I want it as much as possible. I have a big gym. I have a lot of room. So if the state allows us or the city allows us, we'll be a testing center.
You know, Bruce, you've always been community activist. I mean, you have so many charities coming out of your gym, so many programs that you're involved with for kids, for veterans, for puppies. Yes. You even raise money for puppies. We know that you are going to be the most active person involved in this. And I would trust going to Gleason's gym.
Thank you. Well, then you got to resurrect your boxing career. You were there for a short while. And then you be back with Coach Mike for a day or two. So you have to come back.
Coach Mike ain't there anymore, though, is he?
Oh, he's right.
I'll train you, Jill. I'll train you.
There you go.
Okay.
Vic, do you have any questions?
No, I just want to say that there is people watching from Mexico, USA, United Kingdom, Spain, Italy, Argentina, Uruguay, and Germany. And Norman Stain says hi. Doug Banoni, Benoit Russell, Farah Kayouf, Alonso Fitch, Monica Jimenez, and Juan Laporte says, Gleason's gym, my home.
Wow.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
So boxing was building a lot of momentum when this all went down. I know I was in town to do the fight for the 14th. The Battle of the Badge was on the 13th. When the dust clears, what do you think the future is going to look like? Will we build it up again?
Yeah, well, you know, one thing about the sport of boxing that I've learned, there's always a next. In this case, usually the next is who's the next great champion, who's the next, in my case, people used to ask me for years, who's the next pay-per-view fighter. But boxing is going to be back. It's going to be back stronger than ever. There's a tremendous pent-up demand. Everyone in every sport is going to have a hiccup for a while. You know, it may take 6 months till we can really get a consistent active schedule going. There are going to be some hiccups in learning how to do the fights without fans. There's a learning curve there. You don't want to have a problem because problems will take us back 10 steps, if not eradicate and eliminate it. So we're going to have to be careful, but it's going to be done. It's going to be done right. And the fans are going to love it. There's also a lot of work being done, just so you know, on the production side, because we have to think about how to make the fights tenable for fans at home, for viewers at home when there aren't fans in the arena. So there has to be some different aspects on production.
Let's not go back to the days of the laugh track.
Yeah, well, you know, it'll be this generation's version of the laugh track. But you know, I don't know. You know, we've talked about that, but there needs to be more interaction with corners, with fighters, with people that are there. Every person that's a part of the arena scene and the ring scene and the locker room scene has to become part of what fans feel at home to make up for the absence of viewers at home. Excuse me, you know, not so because there aren't people, spectators in the arena. But we'll accomplish all that. You know, it's something that I love the challenge. But It will take a little bit longer until there are full arenas again, I believe, because we're still going through peaks and valleys with this thing, and until there's a vaccine out there, there's going to be some anxiety and potentially some setbacks along the way. And the biggest challenge here is that a lot of the smaller fights don't rely on gate arenas much, ticket sales, but the bigger fights do, and yet we know we need the bigger fights for the sport to maintain its broader media place on the media landscape. Fighters are going to be asked to take less money in many instances, whether they've thought about it or realize it or not. I know it's going to happen. I know in my case, I've talked to promoters about being completely transparent about their cost structures and their P&Ls, because if they show the fighters that they're being paid well and appropriately in the context of the entire cost structure and revenue stream available, then I think fighters will get in the ring. But that wall's going to have to go down, or fighters are going to say, I'm sorry, I'm sitting home and I'm waiting. I've thought a lot about that and how we address it and overcome it. And that's the type of thinking that's going to be necessary to create a straight line and not a peak and then a deep valley and a wait time. But we're going to do it, and it's going to begin to happen. I think you'll see it sporadically in the month of June. The month of July, I think, is going to start to get very active. There's a lot of July and August fights being planned already, and I think that the fans fighters can't wait, fans can't wait, and then I think the attendance in the arenas will follow from there. I've also spent a lot of time talking to people about how to have social distancing in the arena, true safe practices in an arena. It's a little more difficult, but I think it can be done, and we're going to have to put some thought into that as well, because fans want to get back to seeing fights live. But it's coming, and it'll start to come in June a little bit, July and August in a big way, and fall through the end of the year. I think we're going to have a very, very full calendar in the sport.
Yesterday, 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗 released a protocol that the WBC designed to have very, very safe measures for the fighters, and it can be applied, as you said, in June. I think Mexican commissions are studying them, but it's really good. It's really safe. It is the best way to do it. And I will make sure that I think Jill has it. If not, I will give it to Jill so she can handle to you.
Yeah, that's great, because we're ready for July and August on a few fights I'm working on.
The protocol was put together by the WBC Health and Safety Task Force, which is made up of top medical doctors, including 𝗧𝗔𝗟𝗡𝗗, who is the head of neurology and on the New York State Athletic Commission. So it's not the WBC putting this together. It's put together by medical doctors that work with us who have come up with this protocol.
Great.
So, and
we need to get Heather out of that apartment. I can tell. He needs to get out of there. It's not going to work well for long. So we better get those protocol in place.
For sure.
We all need to get out. It's to escape. Even my dog's trying to get through the window, and she gets out twice a day. It's about all of those. It's about choices. It's about choices.
They're coming. They're coming.
They're coming. I know. I'm going to be optimistic. As we say, cautiously optimistic. It's the best road. I mean, we're in a tough profession filled with beautiful people, and we're going to err on the side of optimism.
So I'll just say, Jill, Victor, Mauricio, Malte, all my friends at WBC, you folks, as always, lead the way and do a great job, not only through these video sessions not only for the people who watch and listen live and through the media platforms, but also for those of us who just look forward to talking about the sport and love it so much and need to share the experience. So it's great. And I'm not surprised at all about the protocol you talk about, because that's what leaders do. And WBC's always been a leader. And that's why I'm always proud to work with you folks. Great friends of the sport and great friends. So thank you.
And learned so much today, Mark, in terms of the process that's going into developing a way to do this.
Yeah, it's great.
It's great to hear.
But everything complements. I mean, we're doing that for the fights, and Bruce is doing that in the gym because we need the gyms before the fights. Right. So we can
Bruce
have
is responsible. We know that. We can count on him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And coming from television, my background primarily when I was young was soap operas, novellas. You got a good story to tell, people will go and watch that
No
story.
doubt about it.
We got some good stuff.
100%.
Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Anything at all?
I'd just like to say that we don't have to worry about the sport of boxing. It's so popular. It always has been. And I think it's the oldest sport in history. I think that boxing started when there were 3 men on earth and 2 of them got into a fight and the other one was a fan. And it hasn't stopped since. Everybody loves boxing, and it might have some ups and downs in quality and talent, but it's here to stay forever, and we'll be back real soon.
Great, Bruce. Can't hit it with a stick. Heather, anything?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me on. It was nice talking to you guys. Nice to see Bruce's face. Nice to see Joellen popping around in his back. Please send her my love.
Mark?
No, I'm good. I spoke my piece just a moment ago. That was my farewell for the day.
That was beautiful. Victor, wrap it up.
I just need to say, Bruce, that we need the 4th person. We need a referee in that ring.
Okay.
Perfect. Jill.
Well, thank you all for being with us and celebrating what I think is going to be a bright and beautiful future. We'll go through a transition and a change, but there it will be. Boxing has always been around, it always will be around, and in your hands, it will be around in the safest, most possible way. So as we always end with, stay home, stay safe, and I always say, be cool.
Be cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Mark.
Virtual,
Hi, Heather.
just virtual hug. Everyone,
Bye, guys.
bye.
Bye.